Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Steve Down and this is my guitar. We are in the fourth week looking at a study on Friday Night Shuffle by Larry Carlton, taken from his 1990 album Sapphire Blue. This week we're taking a look at his third chorus in the solo. Next week is the last chorus of the solo, and then we've got a little stop chorus, and then I'm going to head over to the Patreon channel only, where I'm going to transcribe the sax solo. After that, as voted for by the patrons, we're actually going to go back to looking at a little bit more classic jazz. So we're going to go back to the kind of 50s and 60s jazz. I'm going to get the patrons, as usual, to vote for this. So it could be something like Wes, or it could be Kenny Burrell again, or it could be something like Grant Green. Who knows? But you'll find out in the next couple of weeks. On that note, I'd like to thank my patrons for helping to keep the wheels rolling on this channel. We've had quite a lot of new ones sign up in the last few weeks, so I'm just going to say a big thank you. I might have repeated some from the last episode, but if I do, then you've got double thanks. So big thanks to Oscar, Mark, Elliot, Eric, Junk 120, Gianluca, I think that's how you pronounce it, Jan, Phil, DTD the Sloth, not doing very well today, Paul, Javier, Andreas, Marshall, Eduardo, I love that name, Ollie Eric, Mark, John, Tiemerez, Scott, James, Bill, Scott, and Steve, who signed up today. So big thanks to all you guys and gals who have signed up to this channel. It's really appreciated by me. It does help keep things rolling here. If you want to sign up to the Patreon page, then there is a link below on the screen and below in the show notes as well. It's www.patreon.com/Exeter Guitar Lessons. And there you can get everything that is on this channel. So anything that you see on the screen, any transcription, any exercise, chord scale, arpeggio pack, any examples, they're all over there, and there's a few extras as well. And then you get all the access to the backing tracks too. And you get into the Facebook page as well, and there's an interactive community as well. So there's lots and lots of stuff that's on there. It's well worth going over there, and it's just $3 a month to get all of the transcriptions and backing tracks. From there, it goes up to the next tier, $15, where you can request a transcription. And then from there, it goes up to $35, where you can have a personal 1-hour lesson with me once a month. If you don't want to sign up to Patreon, then there is a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes below. And that's a one-off payment. And if you can't afford anything, which I completely understand people can't at the moment, then just remember to like and subscribe to the page, and drop me a comment below, because I do love it when people drop comments. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at the first 4 bars of this particular chorus. So here we go. Okay, so it's pretty standard fare here. There's a lot of minor pentatonic and major pentatonic coming from G. Take a look at the last few lessons if you are unfamiliar with those scales. The thing that I want to take a look at here is some good old-fashioned string pinching. So what he's basically doing is he's bending up on the second string, and then as he does that, he's tucking the third string underneath his third finger, and then plucking the third string, and then letting both strings down afterwards. Now, this is a technique made famous by Hendrix. So this is basically a close-up of how you do it. And you can see that he does it 3 times in a row. The first one, he doesn't catch anything. And then the next one, he does. So, okay. Now, it does sound fairly dissonant there, but that's kind of the idea. Here's an example of me using that idea, and then a couple of other little extra bits in there too. I've obviously exaggerated the dissonance on there. You don't have to make it sound as dissonant, but I've taken a couple of other string grabs from different positions as well, so you could use those. So here's me giving you an example of that. So obviously that's the first 2 bars that Larry's playing. The next 2 bars are pretty standard stuff that we've looked at before, some major and minor pentatonic stuff. But there is an interesting thing which I'm going to come to next, which is where he's mixing triplets and quavers, and that's quite a difficult thing to do, to move between the subdivisions. That is something we're going to dig into in the next few bars of the chorus. So let's take a look at the next 4 bars of this chorus, where we see him mixing some subdivisions, some triplets and some quavers. Okay, so again, pretty standard fare in terms of what he's harmonically doing. Minor pentatonic, again, a little bit of major pentatonic here and there. And he is targeting the 6th again, or the 13th, depending on how you're looking at it. Again, all of this stuff, all this harmonic theory stuff is all in the last few lessons that we've done on this. So do take a look back at everything if you want to get a full overview and understand exactly what he's doing harmonically, theoretically. But here we're just interested in his rhythmic stuff. So basically here what he's doing is we're starting off with some pretty easy stuff, using some swung quavers and some crotchets. And then he throws in a triplet idea in there as well and mixes that with some quavers. Now that is a really tricky thing to do. If you're unfamiliar with these subdivisions, it's a really good idea to get familiar with them. So just doing it on one note, crotchets are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then quavers would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then triplets. It's best to think of triplets as 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. And then with semiquavers, 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana, 4 eana. So 1 eana, 2 eana, 3 eana, 4 eana. Now, that's all very straightforward and fairly simple, unless you're absolutely brand new to it, but it's when we come to mix them that it starts to get really, really tricky. So here's an exercise of how you can start to mix things. I've made it even more tricky by making the quavers straight. So rather than swinging the quavers, I'm making them straight. So you can experiment with swinging that second bar of the exercise, or by making it straight. I would probably do both in your practice sessions. So obviously in the first bar I'm doing triplets, running up the minor pentatonic scale, and then I switch to straight quavers, and then to triplets again, and then to semiquavers. You can mix this up however you like. Start with semiquavers, move to triplets, or semiquavers and move to quavers, and make those quavers straight or swung. It's up to you. It's completely up to you. You don't need to follow that strict exercise, but the idea is that basically just choosing one scale or choosing one phrase and then changing up the subdivisions as you repeat the phrase. That's basically the idea here. Now this is going to really help you with making some of your lines a little bit more interesting, and that's why Larry's 4 bars here are quite interesting to listen to, because they're not just the same subdivision all through. And so as always, here's an example of me using those mixtures of subdivisions in a blues. Okay, next thing I want to take a look at is some flurries. So let's take a look at the next 2 bars. So that's over the 2-5 chord, the A-7 to D7. Now, harmonically here, he's using some of the A natural minor scale here. So, or you could see this, as still the G major scale, because it is all notes from the G major scale. But he's just targeting notes that would be that would work better in A minor. Okay, so interesting note choices here. And then the second Flurries, which is straight down an A-7 arpeggio. Now he's basically doing this in flurries. So flurries are, kind of like just very densely packed groups of notes. So, okay, and there's legato being used here to make it easier. It's really good to practice flurries of notes, both on the beat and slightly off the beat as well, just to help you to be able to create some rhythmic interest. So here's an exercise of me using some flurries. All I'm doing here is using the G minor blues scale here. So down in that area of the guitar. So here's the exercise. First, it's played with just straight alternate picking. the first bar is on the beat. The second bar, everything is delayed by a semiquaver, so the groups are slightly off kilter. And then in the second playing of it, I'm actually using legato because it's slightly easier. So if your alternate picking isn't quite where you want it to be just yet, then use some legato. So here's that exercise. So obviously I would practice this with a click like I'm showing you here because it helps you to be able to keep a little bit more rhythmically crisp. Larry Carlton would have always practiced with a metronome. His rhythm is impeccable, so he would have practiced either with a metronome or just probably maybe with a drummer. Who knows? He probably says in an interview somewhere, but it's worth making sure that you're practicing to something that is strict time so that you can get your rhythm nice and crisp. And then here's an example of me using those flurries. Let's move on to the very last 2 bars of this chorus. Okay, so here it's all about speed. So in these last 2 bars here, it's all semiquavers. Now, I'm not necessarily interested in the theory or harmony again here. It's fairly standard fare, G minor pentatonic, G minor blues scale stuff here. So not massively interested in that stuff. You can go back and look at the other lessons if you are unaware of this scale and how it harmonically fits with this piece. But the question is here, how do we get to this speed? Because it is quite tricky. At this tempo, it's really tricky to play semiquavers, which is what the subdivision is here. So my suggestion here would be, as always, to warm up. To begin with. And if you warm up with the scale that you're actually using for the line, you're actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're becoming more familiar with wherever you need to be on the guitar, with the scale, with the fingering, and then you're also starting to speed things up as well. To make things easier, rather than just running the scale linearly straight up and down, because that's not necessarily how you would play the line. There's very few lines in here that are straight up and down the scale. I would play it in a pattern, so something like thirds or fourths. Thirds are better to do just because usually things like this are kind of lines like this are played in thirds. The second half of Larry's line does kind of incorporate some third ideas as if he's kind of using a little bit of the exercise I'm about to show you. So it's worth making sure that you are practicing an exercise like this. So here is the exercise of playing the G minor pentatonic scale in thirds. And what I would do is I would start playing this at around about 60 BPM and then gradually speed it up. If you're fairly slow at the moment, then start it at 50 or 60 BPM and just stay there maybe for a few days and just gradually up the metronome count by about 2 or 3 BPM at a time. Don't go jumping by anything like 10 or 15 because you will notice a massive change in the tempo, and that's where you're likely to start making mistakes. If you do it gradually, then it's a little bit like, kind of using dumbbells and stuff. You're gradually increasing the weight, and then so you're not going to strain yourself by jumping 2 or 3 dumbbells. So just make sure here that you're starting nice and slow and then gradually speeding things up. Something to note from Larry's solo here is that one of the bars is semiquavers at a very high speed, obviously. And then the next bar, he switches to triplets. So the exercise from earlier about mixing subdivisions should help you here. And that bar is actually major pentatonic. So he kind of does 1 minor pentatonic and then 1 major pentatonic, which is really, really nice and brings us back into the next chorus, which we'll look at next week. The other thing to think about here is using alternate picking in your right hand. This particular phrase incorporates legato, so it's not strict alternate picking, but if you want to improve your speed, then you could try doing the exercise with alternate picking only rather than using any legato. Or you could try playing Larry's phrase with just alternate picking and take out the legato, and that will help you with your picking. But before I sign off here, here's an example of me using Larry's technique here. And as I did last week, I've put all of the examples together in a solo, so they're all taken from one solo. I just wrote down on a piece of paper the techniques that I wanted to show, and then played a solo using those techniques in the bars that they needed to be in. So it is a little bit clinical, but it just shows you a full solo and how this kind of stuff will sound when it's put together. If you're a member of the Patreon community, then you'll get a PDF with the transcription on, and a GP7 file as well with that. So here is the full 12-bar solo of me using some of Larry's techniques, but using my own solo. Okay, well done. You made it through this lesson. Thanks for sticking around to the end if you did. So hopefully you should now have a good understanding of some Hendrix-style string pinching, some mixing subdivisions, using flurries, and then also some ideas for helping you with your speed as well. Don't forget, if you want to get the transcriptions and the backing tracks, to head over to Patreon. The link is here. Buy me a coffee if you just want to do a one-off thanks for the video. And as always, whatever you're doing, don't forget to like and subscribe and drop me a comment below whether you like it or whether you don't. It would be good to hear from you. And as always, happy practicing, and I will see you next week for Larry's last chorus. Bye.